Hey everybody, welcome back to the weekly weed watch. This week what I want to do is I want to cover a perennial. It doesn't always come up within our row cropping systems, but every once in a while I do get a question about it. And it's one that often gets misidentified. It often gets misidentified as a grass species, which it is not a grass species. So let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, everybody, so this week's weekly weed is going to be yellow nutsedge. So, as I mentioned, this is one that oftentimes can get confused with grass species, and from a distance, it does look like a grass, right? Those long, parallel, narrow leaves, from a distance, you'd say, oh, we're dealing with grass here. But if you get up close and personal with it, if you get to looking at it really closely, you will see that it's a sedge. And the way we can tell that is if you see there, you've got 3 leaves that all come off that plant at the same point. So all 3 of these leaves are coming off at the same area. It's not even really a node, but you have 3 ranked leaves, so they come off all at the same point on that plant, and you will never have that with the grass. That'll only happen with the sedge. So if you see those 3 ranking leaves or those 3 leaves coming out in 3 different directions, you know you're dealing with the sedge. The other thing is, as this gets older, you'll have a triangular stem. With this one, it's still pretty young, so it's hard to kind of see that triangular stem or feel that triangular stem. But as it gets older, you'll see that triangular stem. But when it's this young, just seeing those 3 ranked leaves or those 3 leaves in 3 different directions tells you that this is a sedge and not a grass. Whereas a grass species, those are only going to come off in 2 different directions. You're going to have your leaves coming off in 2 different directions and not 3 directions, and they're not going to all come off at the same point like they do on a sedge. So 3 ranked leaves tells you it's a sedge. Usually these are pretty shiny leaves as well. Yellow nutsedge is a perennial. So most of what we're looking at here right here today, this is kind of a seedling, a patch, but if we let this get established, it will develop a rhizome network, and it's going to reproduce primarily from those rhizomes as well as tubers and nutlets. That's its primary way of reproduction as a perennial, is again through those rhizomes and those tubers. And if we do any type of tillage or movement of the soil, it is a really good way to spread this stuff. Now, for the most part, nutsedge is not a huge issue within our agronomic crops. Usually it's a pretty big issue, or can be an issue in our turf grasses. But within our agronomic crops, you may see it every once in a while. Typically it's going to be in areas maybe where we have a wet spot, and we just didn't get a good stand of a crop, and those open areas and the kind of wet areas, that's where we're probably going to see a little bit more nutsedge. For the most part, if we have good agronomic practices, we can outcompete nutsedge with most of our crops. But if you are dealing with nutsedge, there are a couple of options for you, other than just having good cultural practices and good agronomic practices. If you do have a few patches in corn, a product with halosulfuron such as Permit will help us out with nutsedge, and in soybeans, a product with chlorimuron such as Classic will help us out with yellow nutsedge. But again, for the most part, we don't expect this to be widespread across our fields. More than likely just going to occur in those areas where maybe we just don't have the crop canopy or the crop competition that we need, such as a wet spot, which naturally yellow nutsedge likes anyway. So that is our weekly weed, just highlighting another perennial, not something that's super common in our agronomic crops, but just something to highlight here for you, another look at another weed that crops up on us every once in a while in our no-till acres. So that's your weekly weed watch. I appreciate you tuning in. Tune in next week for next week's weekly weed.